Casey Joyner, I can't wait to hear how he watched this game, breaks it down with us now on the Sports Batch 97.3 ESPN. Casey, where do we even start? Let's start in the first half. What did Atlanta do right to go up as emphatically as they did?
I think it started with their defense. First off, they won the point of attacks in the rushing game. In the first 13 rushing plays New England had, they gained 33 yards. They were getting nothing done on the ground. And I think on defense, it was a very simple concept, very basic concept. I think Atlanta said, New England doesn't have a great receiver. They don't have any Julio. They don't have Julio Jones, so we don't have to worry about that. And they figured all of our cornerbacks are roughly equal in talent, and because Trufant's not there, so all their cornerbacks are roughly equal in talent. So they said, look, we're just going to go up there and we're going to press man cover every one of these guys. So the safety over the top for robber coverage. That's what we're going to do. We're going to do that all game long, and the way we're going to get a pass rush is, Brady, you can't get rid of the ball in 2.5 seconds. It's going to take you a little bit longer because we're going to make your receivers not be able to get open. And New England early on was running a bunch of zone concepts, zone beater concepts. They were running things to try to beat zones, and they didn't adjust early on. So it was a little bit of both factors.
Atlanta it seemed to be a step faster, more athletic. It looked like they were a better football team. So all the things you just said led them to a lead in the first half. Where did it start to fall apart for them in the second half?
Well, it started with the strip sack when they got too aggressive. They had the 3rd and 1, and they decided to throw a deep, go do a 7-step drop, throw a deep pass. And you could see, and I think, and I meant to, wanted to do a little tape research on this, to see, I don't think New England during the season, if they ran into a 3rd and 1 and some team tried to pass, I don't think that they would ever have blitzed against that pass. I would, think that I think that Atlanta didn't figure they'd blitz either, because you could see Ryan drops back. They ran the concept that attacked the left side of the field, there's nobody on the right, so he doesn't have to do a full read. He's looking just at the left side of the field, and then the blitzer comes, and you could see Devontae Freeman. First, he was surprised to see the blitzer, and then he kind of half released, hoping the guy would follow him, and realized the guy wasn't going to follow him, and then gave him a half of a brush block and didn't do any good. And it was a complete shock to Atlanta that the blitzer would be coming there. So I think that was the big thing. When that play happened, it was Atlanta's aggressiveness turning against it.
Casey Joyner, ESPN.com, NFL insider here, looking back at this epic game last night, and really an epic second half in overtime, because the first half was a domination. You talked about the strip sack, huge play in the game. When did you feel that New England got the momentum and that it was a reality that they could come back in that game?
That was the big play when you thought they could come back there. I was watching with my sons, and my youngest son, he's kind of mad at the Patriots for beating the Steelers. He's a Steelers fan, and right about then, he looked at me at that point and said, "That's it. They're going to come back and win this game." Because after that, it was evident that they had a good chance to do it. But I also think that the real turning point to the game, though, beyond that was Atlanta's got they're in New England territory, and they've got and then instead of running the football late in the game, they decided they're going to go ahead and go for it. And the fact they had another 3rd and 1 where they decided to throw the football and decided to get super aggressive, and that's just the thing. If Atlanta plays percentage football in the fourth quarter of that game, we're talking about New England making a great attempt to come back, and the Atlanta Falcons, the Super Bowl champions. But Atlanta gave New England too many opportunities to get back in this game where they had a chance to finish them off.
You look at that one series, Pete, right? We were talking about this earlier. The thoughts on that series. Who's at fault in that scenario where Ryan takes the sack? I mean, it's incomprehensible that they even called a pass play there, but who do you kind of point the finger at in that series? The one, the big one where Ryan gets sacked and they basically get pulled out of field goal range, because the Falcons are Super Bowl champs if they run the ball 3 times.
They probably are. It has to really go on both. Part of it's going to go on the play calling to say, and I think what Atlanta was doing, though, is after they got up 28-3, you can, in fact, I'm going to think back to a game back, you remember the 1992 game where Houston plays Buffalo and gets up 35-3, and then Buffalo comes back, the most famous comeback prior to this game? In that game, when Houston got up 35-3, they just let up. They said, okay, we've got this game won. And you could see they thought we figured this thing's over. And I think Atlanta's coaching staff probably got a sense that when they got up 28-3, kind of a sense of the same thing. The team was, okay, we've got this game won. And I think their play calling was, we need to be more aggressive because the team right now is acting as if we're not being, if we've got this thing won. We need to show the players and show the team, no, we're going to be aggressive. We're still going to get after this. And it led to that mistake. But it's also on Ryan that if you're taking that step there, the one thing you can't do is take a sack, and you must know, okay, I can't hold the ball for this long. Yeah, we're calling a deep pass, but if it's not there, if it doesn't look like it's going to get there immediately, or I think that the pass rush is coming, get rid of this thing. He has to be thinking about it too, so it's double blame.
Yeah, 9 years in the league, Matt Ryan's been, Casey, and he's also the MVP now, and you can't take a sack there. I told Mike earlier in the show that they were on the 22-yard line, then they ended up punting from the 45. They lost 23 yards in 2 plays. Let's talk about the Falcons' defense a little bit, Casey, and did they make enough adjustments on defense, or were they just totally gassed, or maybe the Patriots made the right adjustments?
The Patriots made the adjustments. Early on, the Patriots were calling a lot of passing plays that you would use to attack a zone defense. And those plays can work against man coverage. It's just they're not as effective as if you're calling pass plays to attack a man coverage. And so they were doing those things, and Atlanta just kept playing man coverage. And then you even had the error on when Atlanta had when they threw the interception for a touchdown. On that play, you have the safety over the top. You've got a cornerback and a safety, and the safety. When you're running a play like that, that's a play called spacing, where you're running 3 receivers into an area and you're trying to just hit the short pass. And one thing you can't do when you've got your 3 receivers going up against their 4 defenders, you can't throw to the double-covered guy. And Brady never throws to the double-covered guy, and he did there. So they were doing a lot of things to take advantage of what New England was doing, and New England wasn't really adjusting. And then in the second half, New England started to run more man concept plays and said, okay, we're going to spread the defense out a little more. We're going to attack it that way. And Atlanta really didn't have a defense to stop the man coverage plays that New England was calling. They just said, we're going to play the same thing because that's what it was. You add that to being worn out because of facing 93 offensive plays, and I think it finally led to their downfall.
It seemed to me, Casey, that Atlanta was winning in the A-gap early, and then once they got gas, that opened things up big time for James White to excel. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, like on the goal line plays in the fourth quarter when they had and that's the thing, when New England. I had a discussion with Aaron Schatz from Football Outsider. We had a little back and forth on Twitter. Late in the game, when it's 28-20, New England's driving downfield, and it's okay. Does New England, should they play for the touchdown, or should they play for a quick touchdown, I should say, and then hope they get the 2-point? And if they don't, should they play to get an onside kick, or what should they do? What should they plan for? And I thought they had decided, New England decided, we need to go down here and score, and we have a lot of faith in our 2-point play because I think they figured we've got these guys wore down and we could win that A-gap battle, because on that direct snap to White, they just blew Atlanta's defense off the ball. It was a huge hole, and I think they figured we know what plays we can run here, and we know we can hit them. So, yeah, that A-gap stuff in the second half, I think that started to falter for Atlanta.
Yeah, because I thought that New England would be able to run the ball. I mean, we talked about it last week on the show that, Atlanta could have followed the Eagles' blueprint, that they ran for 200 yards. New England could have followed the Eagles' blueprint. They ran for 200 yards against the Falcons, but Atlanta took that A-gap away and really got the penetration that took away LeGarrette Blount and his effectiveness early in that game. And I thought that really put New England in a bind early. Yeah,
they won that battle. New England was middle of the road. They ranked 18th last season in my good blocking rate metric that measures run blocking effectiveness. So they were not great. They were solid in that metric. It was a lot better than they were the year before, and they're near the bottom of the league. And Atlanta's defense didn't have a great showing in that metric. So Atlanta did some things to win that battle. And then when you start to add that to the game flow, went to, okay, now it's 14. Now they're up 14-3, and now whatever 21. When they start to get to that point, New England has to get away from the running game altogether. So it was a combination of those factors. But yeah, early on they found ways to say, we're going to attack this rushing attack, and we're going to make sure. In fact, I think they figured we want to make sure New England cannot run the football. I think they game plan some things up there to say, we're going to go press man coverage, and we know we're going to do that, and we think that's going to slow down their passing game, and then we're just going to be able to take our personnel. Otherwise, they go up there and stuff the run because we think we got the pass stopped.
Casey, from your perspective, take us through the Edelman catch and then maybe the Mitchell play before that and how important those two plays were.
Yeah, the Mitchell play it's a reminiscent of, I thought of Super Bowl 25 when Mark Ingram breaks 3 or 4 tackles and gets through and gets the first down. It's an underrated play, and people remember a lot of things out of that game, but it's the play that if he doesn't fight through and make that play, they don't win that game. And it's the same thing with Mitchell. Mitchell getting back up. There's a lot of receivers that, look, if they ran that route, they'd slide and hit the ground. They wouldn't jump back up immediately and be ready to make the catch, and Mitchell did. That was something there. And on the Edelman catch, that's just, it's making up for helmet catch. But again, it was as he said in the postgame interview, he said the Atlanta defender didn't finish the play. In other words, the Atlanta defender had a chance to make an interception and didn't finish the play, and I think that's another fatigue factor where Atlanta's defense was in the right place to make the pick, and they didn't do it. In fact, on the play right before the touchdown and overtime and things, they threw the pass to the end zone that an Atlanta defender got one hand on it. And I think if you throw that pass in the first quarter, he's got enough energy to make the pick, but by the time the end of the game was rolling around, he's just had his energy enough to get his hand up.
Were you okay with the pass interference call in overtime?
Yeah, because he got the contact was there before the pass arrived. The defender wasn't looking for the ball. It did materially affect Bennett's ability to catch that pass. Yeah, I mean when you add those factors together, it was something. In fact, I'm glad the officiating yesterday was really good for the most part. I mean, even the holding calls people were complaining about the 3 holding penalties on that one drive. But they were all legit. You look at them and go, okay, that's a holding call. And the one holding call on the Falcons play where they hit the pass that would have set the field goal on that last drive, and that was a WWE caliber chin lock. I mean, that was.
That's what I said. I said he rock bottomed him.
Yeah, there you go. You hit him with the rock bottom. So, but the officials called when those things happened. They called those flags. They threw those flags, and they're supposed to. And that's what you want the officials to do: call the game evenly and call it evenly across the board. So, kudos to Carl Treffer's staff.
Yeah, I don't think the officials I was happy that they didn't play a big factor, that they didn't make a big, blunder in that game. All right, we have an epic Super Bowl finish. Casey Joyner breaking it down with us. I do want to get your thoughts and opinions on the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I got to shake my head here at a lot of the decisions. Number one, the Terrell Owens thing is embarrassing, no?
Yeah, I would say a lot of receivers, though, over the years. It's funny because the Hall of Fame voters tend to be very patient with wide receivers. I think they think there's a logjam of wide receivers, so they'll go, okay, we can. Andre Reed had to wait a while. Tim Brown had to wait a while. I mean, if any position is typically going to have to wait a year or two past when you think they would, it is wide receiver. So it doesn't make sense. He should go in the Hall, and he probably will someday. But at the same time, as I think it's the way the voters have been over the years.
Their reasoning that came out was unacceptable to me. I mean, great numbers, bad teammate. That's not their job, right?
No, and I think that may be the argument that was made. But I tend to think that there's a certain type of voting politics. It's one of those things like they had 2 running backs this year. You never put 2 in the same position. There was a long time there where they said they never were going to put a punter in there. That's our guy didn't go in. I think they have a certain mentality. We want to have this vote. We want to spread this vote out among certain players and such. And I think that maybe there's a personal dislike among some of the voters. I just don't think that long term it's going to keep them out. I think that this was more a matter of the politics of how they handle wide receivers. It's the same way like with safeties. It's impossible for safeties to get in there because the voters just don't seem to value safeties as much as they should.
Yeah, Dawkins, what's your thoughts there?
I forget the Philadelphia writer. There was one Philadelphia writer who said the list of players who have 25 interceptions, 25 forced fumbles, and I think it was 25 sacks in their career, and it's Brian Dawkins. He's the only one. There's nobody else who's done that. He belongs, but if you can't get John Lynch in the Hall, how are you going to get? I mean, Dawkins is great in things. I'm not saying that that he shouldn't go in necessarily in front of Lynch, but if Lynch has been waiting for years and he can't get in, it's hard for Dawkins on the first try to get in. So I think it's going to be one of those situations where that's one of the reasons that was good. They made contributors and they made historical players and they put those players in a separate tier because it's supposed to open the door for some of these other players who have a tough time getting in, but it's not working right now.
He's going to have a tough one because Ed Reed's going to be coming up, Polamalu is going to be coming up, so that'll be interesting. I got to be honest. I'll be flat out honest. I don't think Terrell Davis nor Kurt Warner should be in. But I know I'm a very tough grader when it comes to these things. Where do you stand on those guys? Yeah,
I was of the same mindset. Davis, you can possibly put him in on the Gale Sayers Ballot, were short career but really big impact, but he wasn't Gale Sayers, and but so I can sort of see him getting in. And Warner, I can sort of again that he doesn't have the longevity, but I kind of think if you're putting Warner in, why aren't you putting in Jim Plunkett? Now, the biggest snub I thought was Coryell. I still can't understand. A third of the teams run Coryell playbooks, and other teams use Coryell concepts. He changed the game. Yeah, his teams didn't win Super Bowls, but he changed the game. And frankly, he turned St. Louis around in the 70s and got them to be a playoff team. And in the 70s and 80s, he made Air Coryell one of the best teams in the NFL. So I'm looking at that going, how can you not put this guy? What else did he have to do? I mean, every team is using this guy's playbook, and he had some success. So I'm flabbergasted they didn't put Coryell in.
Casey, are the voters showing that longevity isn't important anymore because of some of the ways the votes went here with Warner and Terrell Davis?
Yeah, I think that for the short term, they're showing that impact tends to be a bigger factor for them. But I think part of that also may be that sometimes you've got players now who are playing for so long that if back in the day, years ago, if you had a 10, 12-year career, it was a long career, and now it's sort of the expectation that you're going to have a Jerry Rice career, you're going to have a Tom Brady career, even like a Peyton Manning, you're going to be playing late into your 30s, which just didn't happen for a long time. So I think it's kind of set the bar higher that you have to have these longer careers because these shorter careers just aren't going to cut it as well in the Hall of Fame voter minds.
Casey Joyner, ESPN.com, of course, NFL insider, and looking back at that Super Bowl. So in the end, the arguments are all over, right? Bill and Tom, they're the best ever.
I would have to say I would have to agree with that, yes.
But it sounds begrudgingly.
Yeah. Not begrudgingly, but I think when you after last night, if you can't think of them as the best ever, I just what you bar. I mean, it's one of the, you have to set that as the bar for what it is. I mean, last night to be able to, I think last night for Tom Brady, if you're looking at last night's game, you're saying before last night it was like I used to have this thing where if I thought if I had to start a football team, I had to pick any player in history to start a football team. I was always a Walter Payton and a Jerry Rice guy, one of those two. Walter Payton when I was younger, Jerry Rice as I got a little bit older. And so these are the two guys, hardest working guys on the team. They're great teammates. They're going to be somebody who raises love everybody around them. And as great as other quarterbacks were, these are guys I thought you could make as cornerstone players. Now, if somebody asks that question, it's Tom Brady. I have to. If I'm starting a team, he's the guy. He's the hardest working guy. He's the most prepared guy. He's tough. He's brilliant. Everything you want. Every team. Bill Parcells said it years ago. He said the best player on your team is the best person on your team who can make everybody on your team better. And I think you can look at Tom Brady from that perspective and say he'd be the sort of guy who makes everybody on your team better. And he's the best ever. And
that's how we'll end it today with Casey Joyner here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. The football season is in the books, and they gave us a great ending. But there's plenty of off-season stuff, and, of course, we'll be tapping into Casey's mind for a lot of the off-season stuff as well that will be starting soon. You might see guys getting cut and released this week here. Free agency, the draft will be all over it. Thanks, pal.
And WrestleMania, too.
That's right, and we're sending someone to WrestleMania PT. We'll have details on that coming up later on this